Hi, welcome to Cookbook. I'm Demaree, and today we have author Aubrey Hirsch, author of Why We Never Talk About Sugar, teaching us how to make special macaroni and cheese. She's going to teach us how to put it together, how to bake it, how to do the whole thing. And then when we're done, we're going to get a chance to sit down to her and talk about a book, talk about what she's writing now, talk about her new sort of forays into illustration and graphic novels and things like that. So, very excited. Welcome to Cookbook. Hirsch, who's here to teach us how to make some fabulous mac and cheese. So how do we do this?
So, I love this mac and cheese recipe because you do not have to make a roux.
Okay.
And I love baked macaroni and cheese. It's my primary source of joy, more so even than my own children.
Sure.
But I can't cook at all, and so making a roux is a little bit above my level.
Sure.
So this is a baked macaroni and cheese where instead of making the roux, you just layer everything together and it still somehow comes out delicious.
Excellent. So where do we start?
Okay, so the first thing you do is you have to take the butter and grease the baking sheet.
Okay.
So that it doesn't stick.
So where did this recipe come from? Where did you find this?
This is a Mark Bittman recipe.
Okay.
My partner has Mark Bittman's cookbook. I think it's called How to Cook Everything.
Oh, okay.
And in the mac and cheese section, this is listed as one of the variations.
Sure.
If you're, lazy. Okay, so you do that. And then...
we cooked a pound of pasta.
Mm-hmm. And 2.5 cups of milk.
Okay.
Just heat it up.
Sure.
So you're just going to put everything in like you would normal mac and cheese, except you're going to do it in layers. Do you want to grab this one? Maybe you can help me here. So we're just going to put a third of the pasta.
Okay.
Make sure it's a third.
Yes.
Exactly.
I assume some buzzer will go off. All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
And then, oops. Okay, so you put in a third of the pasta, and then you put in...
What if I did 2/5?
I'm sure 2/5 will be fine.
Okay.
And then you put in like half of the heated up milk. Just gonna sit over that. And I just realized I'm blocking it with a giant pasta pot. So I'm gonna move that.
Okay.
And then...
Start to layer cheese?
Yes,
or...
and then half of the cheese.
Okay. I need to do... And what kind of cheese do you prefer when you do this?
So I usually get the bag of pre-shredded cheese that is called mac and cheese blend.
That's a thing?
Yeah.
I had no idea. I bought 2 cheeses. I was an idiot.
No, you were above and beyond, Darren. You were making decisions that I normally don't make. But I don't know. I think you can use anything.
All right. Fair enough.
Melts. Okay, and then you're gonna put some little pieces of butter, kind of like all over it.
Sure.
And while I'm doing that, do you want to sprinkle like half of the flour over this?
Okay. Over where the butter's already gone?
It doesn't matter. I don't think it matters. We'll find out.
All right. So how often do you make this?
I used to make it more often before I had 2 children.
Okay.
When I had only 1 child, I used to make it like maybe once or even twice a month.
Okay.
It's so good.
And then you get it for a few days.
Yeah. You have like a huge thing of leftovers, and you can like make a big salad, or like you usually make like roasted broccoli or something.
Sure.
To go with it, and you can also make 2 at a time and then freeze one.
Nice.
Yes, which is something I never thought I would say. But it's a thing you can do.
How very homemaker of you.
I know, right?
All right.
Feels like that. Okay, so
For
then,
the rest?
yeah, another third.
Another third.
Yeah, we're going to do 3 layers.
So I'm way too excited then.
Okay. Yep.
So what do we put on next?
So then it's just the same thing again.
Okay.
So we do another layer of pasta, we do another layer of milk, and then another layer of cheese, butter, flour.
No, we put the rest of the cheese this time? Or
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. Yeah, I guess leave some for the top.
Okay. What we've learned so far is you know how to make delicious mac and cheese, but fractions are not quite in your game. Which is weird, because you and I talk about math and science.
I know, I'm
sometimes,
actually quite smart at math. For some reason, like, when it has to do with cooking, all my math skills just, like, completely go out the window and I just become terrified.
It's a different part of your brain.
Like, I don't know. Especially when there's baking involved, because
Sure.
it's very, very much about chemistry.
Sorry. You're more of a big thought science person,
That,
right?
yes,
Yeah.
I am now, that's for sure. and
then
then yeah, like half of what's left of the flour. Okay, that was good.
Okay.
And then
One more time?
one more time.
All right. Just throwing macaroni this one. This is why we do this in my kitchen.
Just dramatic effect.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, spread this out.
Make it look nice, Darren.
Yeah. Sorry. I don't want to fuck up, all right? Come on.
I want the beauty shot at the end to be really
Sure.
convincing.
No, we bought one. It's in the freezer. We're just going to whip it out at the end. And this is the one Aubrey made.
This is like a microwavable.
What are you doing?
Oh, good.
There are children here.
But we're making the mac and cheese.
There's children.
Well, you're a child.
What?
You're a child. That's what we're
This is Cal.
This is my son, Cal.
Who is that?
That's Emily's taking a movie, bud. You want to say hi?
Hi.
Hi, Cal.
So they're watching Moana in the basement,
Yes,
so
they're well taken care of.
more important things to do. Okay.
All right.
And then we're going to do a little bit more butter and a little bit more flour. That kind of seems
Okay.
like we put a lot of flour. So maybe just like sprinkle
Just a little.
flour. Yeah.
All right. Now this seems sort of like mistake-free. Like I don't know how you mess this up.
I don't think you can screw it up. I mean, I think if you didn't put flour in it, probably
Or you
get like a
didn't
little
bake it or
sticky
something like that.
You
Sure.
didn't bake it.
Okay.
Probably not taste very good. But yeah, no, I don't think you can screw it up too badly, which is great.
Perfect.
Okay, so then it looks like that, and
Okay.
then
We got breadcrumbs.
yes, you add some breadcrumbs to the top.
Sure.
You know, per your taste. Give it a little crunch at the end. I like the dramatic music is happening right as I'm doing the breadcrumbs. That's amazing. Okay. And that's it.
And that's it. And
we've
then
got-
400 degrees for how
Yes.
long?
For about a half an hour.
Okay.
Yeah, but you'll know when it's done because it'll get all melty and it'll look like delicious
Sure.
mac and cheese.
Perfect. Well, we're going to put this in the oven, and Aubrey and I are going to get a chance to sit down and talk for a little bit, and then we'll get to enjoy this. Mac and cheese is cooking. It'll take a little while, but while it's cooking, I wanted to talk to Aubrey about all manner of things. I've been fascinated paying attention to all the different things that you're doing now. So, other than the t-shirts, which fantastic, right? Your first book was short stories,
Yes.
and then you did a split chat with
Uh-huh.
Alexis Pope, right?
Yeah.
And was that stories? Were those the Flash, the fake president
Yeah.
histories? That's what it was?
Yeah, I
Okay.
call them, my partner coined this term, counterfactual biographies.
Awesome. Very relevant.
So they're fictional stories, they're all flash fictions, and they're fictional stories about like real or historical people.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. But now you're also doing graphic novels and design work.
Yeah, because writing is just too easy if you just write
just got-
stuff.
yeah.
So I need to make it harder. No, I just kind of noticed that literary magazines had started publishing comics, like literary comics.
Nice.
And it just looked like fun.
Sure.
And I was like, I'm going to do that.
Well, I knew you could draw. How did you translate that into like what programs? How does it work?
So that was my only hesitation, and it's
Okay.
so funny like thinking back on this because it hasn't even been that long. Like when I said that to myself, like, oh, okay, I want to try to start making comics. That was like last April, so it hasn't even been a year. But I feel like I've like come so far, you know, like
Sure.
when at the beginning I remember talking to Devin, my partner who knows more about technology or did at that moment.
Okay.
I think now we've sort of
Don't
gone the
need
other
barely.
way.
I mean, he can take care of the
But,
kids, but
yeah.
you don't need him for it's fine.
No, not anymore.
Right.
But I remember saying to him, like, I need to do a thing, but I don't know if it's possible. And he was like, okay, what do you need to do? And I was like, I need to, like, draw something in a square and then put it on a page and then move the individual squares around
And that's a thing?
add text. Yeah, and he was like,
Nice.
oh, you can just use InDesign. There's like literally a program meant to do that where
Sure.
you can put in an image, you can put in text. So I was like, oh, great.
Right.
So I spent like $10 to subscribe to the Adobe Creative Suite for 1 month.
Nice.
I was like, I'll just do it for a month. It'll cost $10. It'll be fine. And I started just with like paper and a pencil and a pen.
And then you would scan it,
Pen.
or
Yeah, so
Okay.
I drew everything like with pencil, and then I went over it with the pen. There's probably a fancy name for it, but I don't know what it is. And then, I actually, what I did is I just took a picture of the drawing with my cell phone, which is
Okay.
probably not what you're supposed
Maybe
to do.
not.
And then I would text it to myself, so then it would
Sure.
be on my computer. And then you can kind of like mess with the contrast so that it doesn't look like paper anymore. It looks kind of
Sure.
more like a digital image. And then put it into InDesign. And so that was like the genesis of it. And it's very funny looking back at that first comic because it feels like looking at your baby pictures where you're like,
Sure.
oh, like,
Isn't that
like,
cute?
how
What I was trying to
sweet.
do.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So now I've kind of like gone incrementally, like learned more and gotten myself more tools. So now I use like Photoshop and Illustrator. Also, I tried working with color more because before I had thought I'm not good with color.
Okay.
But now that I can do it digitally, I think I am good with color. I think I just need to be able to do trial and error.
Okay.
And when you're working like in natural medium, you can't. You know, like if you're doing
Sure.
like paint, you can't like be like Control Z, take that paint
Right.
away. You're sort of stuck with how it looks. So that was really helpful for me just in terms of like putting in a color and then it didn't look right and saying like, okay, that doesn't look right, and then erasing it and then putting in a new color.
Sure.
I feel like I've learned a lot through doing that.
It was just it was a jump to me. Like I always sort of, whenever I'm doing from different poetry thing to different poetry thing,
Yeah.
there's a tether that I know sort of led me from one to another.
Yeah, yeah.
And when I saw you jump into essentially a graphic novel now, which you're putting together,
Yeah.
I was like, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
That's kind of how I feel too.
but it's a comfortable place for you now, and
Yeah, I mean, I
Okay.
really like it. It's
Sure.
really fun. I can say that. I just really like doing it. Like when I sit down and if I have to like write, you know, a story or whatever, like what I always tell my students is like, I don't like writing. Like I sort of hate writing. Like
Sure.
the thing I like is having written, you know,
Yeah.
like when the thing is done and I'm like, like look at this thing I made, like, and you can share it with people.
Sure.
That part is great.
Sure.
But the actual like, you know, what's another word for orange? Like that part just sucks.
Sure.
But with this stuff, I actually really like the process, you know,
Awesome.
because I can sit there. Now I have a drawing monitor, so I can do everything digitally, and you know, I'm just like drawing astronauts and like watching Survivor, and
Sure. Well, the building of it
doesn't feel like work.
seems logical. Like it seems like it fits in sort of the construction of the whole world. And narrative is narrative.
Yeah, yeah,
Once you
yeah.
understand how the stories are going to work, it can work visually. It can work just on the page. Well, I mean, whichever way you want to do it.
yeah, I think that's true.
Okay.
And I've never been a very like plot forward writer.
Okay.
Like I've always been driven more, I think, by language and image, which is
Mhm.
why I like flash fiction so much, because
Sure.
it can kind of be more about that. And I think this is in some ways like taking that to the extreme. Like,
Sure.
well, what's really about image and language?
Right.
Graphic novels.
Sold. All right, so the one you're working on now, what's the story that's going into it? I've seen some of the pages online, but what?
Yeah.
Yeah, where do you know where it's going? I mean, did you go ahead and map out the whole story?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's done. I think. Well, I shouldn't really speak to it because I'm brand new to it. But at least for me, the whole thing has to be done first because once you
Sure.
make a page, it's like I'm not changing anything. You know, it takes so long
Right.
to like make a page. So it's all kind of like
Text has to
storyboarded
be
out.
perfect. You
Yeah,
just
the
gotta
text
be-
is
okay.
done, the script is done, and then I've done these little like thumbnails so I know like what picture is going with each page.
Okay.
And so the story, it takes place in this place, maybe you've heard of it, it's called the Mars Desert Research Station.
Okay.
And it's a real place, although mine is a fictionalized version of it, but it's like a fake Mars habitat in southern Utah
Okay.
where scientists go and they live in full simulation and pretend that like they're living on Mars to kind of like prepare us for if we
Sure.
ever put an actual colony on Mars. And so in real life, I think you go for 2 weeks.
Okay.
And then in my fictionalized version, it's much bigger, and they've
Okay.
now kind of like gone to step 2. So they're bringing not just scientists, but regular people they've recruited to live for 1 Martian year
Okay.
in the Mars Desert Research Station, which is like roughly equivalent to 2 Earth years.
Okay.
And so my protagonist is a girl named Lena, and she's 14 when she gets to the Mars Desert Research Station, and she doesn't want to be there. And then her...
Wouldn't think a 14-year-old would want to.
She hates it.
Yeah.
She really hates it. And her dad just keeps telling her, how important it is.
Sure.
And then her mom has a surprise pregnancy, and she decides to leave so that she doesn't have to have her baby on Mars.
Sure.
She'd rather have her baby on Earth. And that, of course, makes Lena even more upset. But there's a bright spot. She kind of falls in love, 15-year-old version of love, with one of the other kids in the simulation.
How many kids are in the simulation?
There,
it's a big enough thing.
Yeah, there's 28 people.
Okay.
And so it's like 7 scientists and then some families, and I think there's not too many kids, but there's
so it's more than just hormones, and you're the only option.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, so it's sort of like part sci-fi, part queer love story.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's very fun.
But you seem incredibly excited about it.
I really like it. It's really fun to do.
Now, how does having the kids play into writing a story like this? Is it because you've done a lot of nonfiction writing about motherhood and things like that?
Yeah, that's
true. So is this a complete step aside from that, or?
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know.
Is it still because you've got? It's an older child. She's 14.
Yeah.
And you have 2 boys.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's very much from her perspective. So it's not, the parents are not so much a factor.
In fact, the mom even leaves.
Yeah, the mom's gone for most of it, and the dad's sort of like the villain, I guess.
Okay.
So it's definitely not, you're identifying with her, like, rather than sort of the parents. But yeah, I don't know. I always tell my students, like, my fiction is always infinitely more heavily researched than my nonfiction.
Right.
Because I do like to write a lot about things I don't know, or things I want to know about, and I write a lot
it's a
about
science thing. We thought,
yeah, and so I've done like a ton of research about the Mars Desert Research Station, and like learned a lot of cool, interesting details about that, and that was really the impetus for the story. Was just like I learned about this place, and I was like, that is so weird, and then I just wanted to like write a story about that place, and yeah, she just seemed like the right.
It seems much more like an earnest place than like the Biodome was and things.
Yes,
you know what I mean? Like this is real science. This isn't a reality show. This is.
No, it has a different vibe than Biodome, like the Pauly Shore movie. You mean? Yeah, it's definitely it's hitting a different note.
I hope half of what we're going to talk about is son-in-law. If that's okay. But,
oh no, that's great.
But the most recent things that I've read of yours had been the nonfiction essays and the different. You do Q&As and things like that too, but you still do the nonfiction essays. But it was interesting for me to see it jump into this, and it's fascinating to me that the mom disappears at the beginning of, and then you move on into I'm not gonna study that.
That's probably I never do that. Yeah. Well, when I first started doing this, I said, okay, I'm going to do a couple shorter things. I'm going to kind of like test the market. Sure. Because you also want to know, like, I don't want to waste my time, right? Sure. So I was like, okay, I'll make a couple of comics, and then if they suck, then I'll know, like, okay, so I won't do that anymore. Right. So I made like two shorter pieces, both of which are nonfiction, and then I sold those right away. And then I have now had people ask me to make them comics, which is great, which is way better than going through the slush. So then I have another one coming out in the Florida Review sometime this spring that is longer. It's like 12 pages, and it's also nonfiction. So I am doing like a lot of the nonfiction still in this space. Right. But this just really, I really wanted to like make a story out of this.
It feels like you're sort of sliding into like a new home with this sort of thing. Like this is maybe how the storytelling's going to come.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll see. I really like it.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, what's the process going to be like? You talked about hopefully placing the graphic novel at some point. Yeah. And you've got an agent to help you with that. But how's that process going to be different than the collection of stories? Like, what are I know the poetry side of it, which is, sort of arduous and not much fun, but
submit all the context.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, so when I sold my short story collection, that was kind of like, it wasn't super deliberate. It was just like, okay, I've been like publishing stories, and I have kind of like a platform now, and maybe someone would publish a book with my name on it, which seemed like bonkers. And so I just did that myself. I didn't have an agent or anything at that point, and that was with a small press, Braddock Avenue Books, and they're great. They're still putting out great books, and so that was like sort of fairly simple. And then based on that book is how I got my agent, who actually signed me on a partial of a novel, of just a regular novel.
Because when you went to Colorado, right? Were you working on a novel?
Yeah.
Okay. Where is that? Is it
on my hard drive?
Okay.
I'm still working on it, more in theory than in practice.
Sure.
But it still exists, and it's still like a cool.
The
kids want donuts.
Right. I told them if they were good boys, they could have donuts. I think your son's bringing that up now.
Good boys.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I still have a lot of love for that project. So I'm hoping that it's something that I still will finish. But
it's great that the agent sort of took the new thing you're doing and went like, okay, let's figure this out.
I hid it from her for a really long time, and I was afraid she was going to fire me or yell at me or something. But she was so nice. And I think part of what was appealing about it is that I could sort of write out the whole thing, like the script first, and then I could do it in fits and starts.
Right.
Because, you know, in that year, everything was great. You know, I had a baby, I moved across the country 2 times, so it was just like...
One time was enough.
One time was really plenty. And it's hard to, like, find time to sit for, like, 4 hours.
Yeah.
And, like, when I was working on the novel, it really felt like I had to be, like, centered in that space. And especially as it grew, I had to kind of, like, remind myself of what I'd done. And, like, whereas this, it's like I can sit down, I can draw one panel, and then I can put it away. And I can pick up again, and I can feel like I've made incremental progress. So, but I sent the script to my agent and some sample pages of the art, and she really liked it. So, yeah. So I don't know.
The novel thing always seemed incredibly daunting to me. I can do like the long poetry sequences, and I can map out and plan and how I want arcs to work and how I want to come back and do different things. And I can use musical cues. I'll listen to the same music, and it sort of helps you get in the mind frame.
The hypnosis.
But yeah, I mean, I don't think I could remember on page 22 when I'm writing page 400 that this was the... And poetry gives you, with abstract and metaphor and different things like that, you can fuck with that tether much more and get away with it much more than you can. But you said on page 22, and that sort of largeness of the project always looked incredibly just impossible to me to pull off.
It's hard, and also you make changes as you write, or at least I do. And
every plot change is going to have reverberations.
Right, and the general wisdom, which I think is really good, is to just always go forward.
Sure.
So that's what I've been doing. So like if you make a change, like if you're like, oh, she shouldn't have a dog, she should have a cat. You just write it going forward, and then you'll go back and change it later, because you're going to have to rewrite the whole thing anyway, you know, so you might as well just not, otherwise you just spend your whole time writing the first 10 pages over and over again. But then at some point, you know, you get to like I'm at about like page 200 or so, and you're like, oh my god, I have all these things. You just have left this like explosion of shrapnel behind you of things that you're going to need to like completely rework to catch yourself up to where you are, and then, you know, you still have another 80 pages or so to write. So
and that's one of the reasons why when I do like a big sequence, like I'll write an arc of 40 poems or so and another arc and have it sort of go back and forth. And instead of editing it to get it to work seamlessly together, I yank whole poems out.
Oh, really?
To get it to work and get to pull off what I want. That way I'm not having to do... I can, in 180 or 200 or 342 poems or whatever it is, sort of yank out and make it work what it was intended to be. But I made an error there, and it wasn't quite, and it doesn't lean well. So with that many poems, you can map it out the best you can, but they're all individual things trying to work as one. And, you know, I've seen Transformers fuck up. I know that if you gotta, you know, you've got to, if you can remove and get things to lay the way you want them to ultimately, then that's what the goal is, and not trying to change them all. But that's me getting to cheat with poetry. That's not how novels work.
Well, I think it is for some people. Some people, like, I think do, like, overwrite.
Sure.
Like, they write these, like, crazy balloon drafts, and then they basically do that where they have, like, all of this stuff, and then they just prune it down into a novel.
Okay.
But I don't think I'm that kind of writer. I'm still learning what kind of a writer I am as a novelist. But I'm only 2/3 of the way through, so we'll see.
What is the novel about? Is there science in this one as well?
Not as much.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit, but the novel is about a woman named Clara, and she's like 38 when the novel opens, and she's just...
Wait, there are women in your books?
Yeah.
That's an awesome idea.
From time to time.
All right.
And she's just kind of like coming around to she and her husband, the fact that they're never going to have a baby. So they have been experiencing infertility for however many years. They blew all their money on like a package of IVF treatments that did not work.
Sure.
And so they have kind of like just had a sort of like a marriage saving conversation of like, okay, we're moving on. That's over, and now we're going forward with this new plan.
Okay.
So that's kind of where the book opens, and she's just starting to try to settle down from that.
Okay.
And then she finds out that one of the students in her sophomore history class is pregnant.
Okay.
And it pretty much sends her over the edge. You know, she could handle it when it was like the other teachers getting pregnant.
Sure.
But this just seems to her to be totally unfair.
Right.
And she gets the news in like an email from the guidance counselor's office, and she goes home and she basically like hides in bed for 3 days. And then she decides to sort of like look into the students' like social media. She's just in this.
She becomes obsessed with how that happened.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And she reads into some of her Facebook status updates and decides that this student, she doesn't think she wants to keep the baby. So
she
then
convinces herself of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she kind of sees an opening there.
Sure.
And then she makes a lot of really ethically questionable decisions. Like she lies about the student's grade to kind of like coerce her into joining an after-school club of which she's the moderator. Okay. So she can get close to her, and she starts like giving her rides home, and eventually convinces her to give her her baby. And you know, ...
Right?
Yeah.
I'm frightened of her.
She's awful, but she's really, really fun to write because she just does terrible, terrible things.
Sure.
But she's really good at justifying them to herself. So she has to play this whole game with the student, and then of course with her principal and the school who think this is not a good idea, and she has a best friend, and then also her husband with whom they've just had this like marriage-saving decision that this is over, and now she has to find a way to convince him to go yet another direction.
With the new plan in which she's... Right.
Yeah. Which is not
well, it sounds
a good
fascinating.
Plan. Yeah. That one's fun to write too.
Well then, yeah, I imagine your agent would be excited about that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But now she's excited about the new thing.
Yes.
Which you're excited about as well.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah. Lots of excitement.
How many of the fake fictions did you end up writing? Like
of the counterfactual biographies?
Yeah, that was part of the chapbook.
Yeah.
That seems like something that'd be awesome as a full length. Are you still doing any of those?
Oh, yeah, that would be kind of fun. No, I haven't written one since I kind of sewed up that project. They are really fun. But
I think the last reading we did together, you read some of those.
I think that's right. It started to feel a little bit like a formula for me after a while, like where I would think of like a person, or sometimes I would just go down a Wikipedia rabbit hole until I found someone who was interesting, and then I was like, okay. And it was a really fun challenge to try to like put in all the interesting
things. Maybe the writing itself wasn't that exciting, that kind of thing?
Yeah, it was fun, but after a while, like, I kind of felt like, okay, I am doing the same thing in all of these.
Sure.
Like, it was like I was Nickelback, you know, only better, but where it was like, they were all the same.
Most of my conversations about you end up back in
going to Nickelback.
Yeah.
Same structure and same. I felt like they were all kind of going to the same place tonally.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, I think I need to do something else.
That's the pivot happens to me a lot, where I'll do something that's really serious and be like, you know what, I'm gonna write poems about how my kids are awesome for a little while. I came to you and I was talking about, I've got this idea for the nonfiction thing, like the Donut Friday.
I see that project.
Because at that point I hadn't figured out how to do poems out of that. I didn't know how. And then I figured out how I can make it work. And it ended up, after writing, I'd written those unfinished murder ballads that were all really sort of dark and people dying and all sorts of things.
Yes.
And I was like, I'm going to write about how my kids are awesome. And so I did the Donut Friday thing, and I did Kids at the Wedding, and I did these different sequences that were all nice and sort of like lovely and sort of. And so then you pivot into, well, I'm going to write something a little bit darker now. And once you end up sort of figuring out how best to do that, you can sort of keep yourself working as opposed to, well, this is all crap, I'm done.
I think that's true. I think it's good for the soul to be able to like refresh.
Sure.
Which is why I also like to work on shorter things and longer things kind of at the same time. You know, work on something longer and
put something down and come back. And that way you don't, I mean, if you get too far down the rabbit hole that you can't, it doesn't feel vibrant anymore, it doesn't feel like something that's worth your time, you're more apt to just sort of put it aside and not come back.
And for me, as I said before, I take so much pleasure in the finishing.
Right.
That like it's hard for me to do a longer project because you don't get that moment.
Right.
You know, and so to do some shorter things while I'm working on something longer, then I can still feel like the pleasure and relief of finishing something.
Well, that would sound, with the construction of the graphic novel thing, once you get a page done, it sounds like you get that feeling.
Victory. Yeah, it's definitely true.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're gonna work on that and finish that, and this is the last year at Oberlin?
Yeah.
Okay.
Last year at Oberlin.
And then, who knows?
Into the abyss.
More mac and cheese.
More mac and cheese, hopefully. More astronauts.
More astronauts.
Yeah.
Awesome. Would astronauts get mac and cheese, or would it be powder? How does that work?
Everything is like freeze dry. It's like what you would eat on like the International Space Station. So everything is sort of like soft canned or.
Every movie I see now has aliens in those space stations.
Yeah,
so I don't think I want to.
It's so hot right now. Yeah. Yeah, there's no aliens in my book, but.
Okay.
You know.
But there could be.
There could be, yeah. It's in Utah, so
okay.
You know,
I've always been scared of Utah.
Yeah. Well,
Have you been to Utah?
There's creepy people in Utah.
Okay, maybe. I don't know. All right. Well, I appreciate you coming in and teaching us how to make mac and cheese and talking about all the new stuff. And you are probably the oldest friend I've had come on here, so it's great to see you.
Out here, and
everyone
by
else.
You mean youngest?
She's so aging so well. I brought up at the end of Karen Crago's, and I'm assuming you got rid of it. But at one point, we did a reading of a chapbook I did down at Miami.
Oh, I have that with like the blue stapled cover.
Where you got me to write down. You have that.
Oh, yeah, of course. Of course, I have it. Yes.
All right.
Are you looking to reissue it?
No. I just remember waking up the next day going, I should have not written those things in that book.
Oh, no, I'm keeping it forever. I have a whole bookshelf in my house that's just of my friends' books. And it's there, Darren. Okay. Yeah.
See, I'm still wary. At some point, I was
blushing.
I was trying to find, someone sent me a note that someone was selling a chapbook I did at Worcester at a bookstore in Arizona, and they were trying to get like $80 for this thing. And I'm like, what the fuck did I write in that book that they've got? Because it says it's signed and transcribed.
Oh, you thought that was my copy?
No.
Oh, a different one, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I met you in Miami, this was after, but I just want to know what I wrote in that book that someone's trying to sell at some weird bookstore in Arizona.
Yeah.
That is, whatever's in that one, you should keep that or burn it.
Well, now I'm going to sell it, now that I know it will be worth $80.
We'll see how the cost of the move goes.
Look for that on my website.
For charity, right? Something.
Right, sure.
The Aubrey Hirsch charity
Fund.
All right. Anyway, so thank you for joining us. I'm glad that's still around, and it's slightly frightening. Anyway, so thank you very much.
You're welcome, Darren.
This is our March episode of Cookbook. Next month we have Robert Vaughn, hopefully, and then Kristen Latour. We're going to take Cookbook on the road and head to Chicago and get to film there. I want to thank Aubrey Hirsch for stopping by and teaching us how to make delicious mac and cheese. If you're interested in her book or her t-shirts or anything that Aubrey's got her hands in, you can contact her at her website, aubreyhirsch.com, or the t-shirts through Cotton Bureau, I believe. But thank you, Aubrey, for coming, and we will see you folks next month for Robert Vaughn and then Kristen Latour after that. Thanks for joining us at Cookbook.